J-Tech Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Bastek and Mike Jacobs.
Welcome in and hello. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. It's the game show, guys. I'm Tom Bastek.
I'm Mike Jacobs. Welcome all. Welcome, Tom. How are you doing today?
I am well. Thanks, Mike. We had a good week around here. How about you?
Doing well. I've gotten into the game of flipping magic cards online, and that's
wait.
well.
You mean flipping as in like throwing up in the air and seeing if they fall, heads or tail?
No, buying and selling. I'm selling off my collection of cards I no longer use, and instead buying cards that have longer term investment value.
Oh, okay. So basically, you'll just hang on to them for a year or two, and then see what they go for, and bump them up.
Yes, exactly.
Cool, nice. So that's a little additional income for you coming in.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I wouldn't say additional income so much as it is a self-sustaining hobby. It also allows me to buy records and tapes and things like that. So, it's a way for me to continue collecting the things I like to collect without having to spend as much out-of-pocket money.
It's a great idea. Great idea.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. Speaking of great ideas, this is our 34th show, man. We're just around the corner from 50. You know that, right?
I mean, I guess in that we're more than halfway there. I'd say we're just around the corner from 40, but I'll give you 50.
I don't know. 50 seems so close now.
I mean, it's true. It's going to be kind of amazing when we get there. But,
to be honest, though, because 50 has seemed so far for so long. And now this week was like the first week I was like, wow, man, we're not too far from 50.
That's true. But, based on our show cadence, 50 won't be until season 3. So.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. All right, we have a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the show this week, which, by the way, the featured show this week, Lingo.
One of my personal favorites.
Yeah, it's one of Christian's personal favorites, too. We'll talk to him in just a little bit. But right now, let's talk about housekeeping.
The only thing we have was, I had mentioned in the news, we talked a bit about how the sort of playground rumor of the day was that Singled Out was rigged for some reason or another, and that I would look into it. I totally forgot to do that.
Okay.
But part of the reason why I forgot is because I don't really think there's any evidence for it. I found no suggestion of that in all of the articles and things like that I read. So I do think it was just, I don't even know if it was a widespread rumor just beyond my literal playground, but no evidence that Singled Out is rigged. But in the end, who cares? The show still sucks. Let us never speak of it again.
So the 7th grade focus group that you guys had on the playground is non-reliable.
Yeah, who knew 7th grade boys are not reliable sources of information in 1995?
It's okay.
Go figure.
I think we're fine. We're fine.
What are you
All
gonna
right, well, let's not waste any time. Let's talk to Christian about the news.
All right.
Light up your cigarette, crack open a beer, put the kiddos to bed. From chaos around the world to carnage in your very own front yard, it's time for the news.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mike. This is the news brought to you by BuzzerBlog.com. I'm Christian Carrion. Nickelodeon has a new game show premiering this week. I can't believe they did this with such short notice, but we have a new cartoon trivia-based game show coming to Nickelodeon called Tuned In, Tuned, Tooned. And this is a show, again, all about trivia relating to Nicktoons, relating to the cartoons that have aired on Nickelodeon for the past 20 years. I think that people like us will probably be disappointed that there won't be much Rocko's Modern Life or Ren and Stimpy on this show, but they do have Slime, which I'm excited for. So Tuned In premieres February 8th on Nickelodeon. Now, I watched the trailer for the show. There's a minute and a half long commercial. If I'm not mistaken, this is hosted by an anthropomorphic iPad on a big robotic arm. If I'm not mistaken, that is who or what is hosting this show.
That's really weird. And I want to see that to discuss it further, but I just got very excited. I didn't know this was a thing. Nicktoons are my jam, but as you mentioned, not a whole lot of Rocko's Modern Life or Ren and Stimpy. Can we dive into that aspect of it a little more? Do you know how, Are we talking will there be any mention of historical Nicktoons?
I would bet not. I didn't see too much of it in what I saw of the show. The kids seem to be ages like 13 to 15, maybe a little bit younger. So I think some of the stuff that we would know everything about, they weren't even around for. So I'm pretty sure that the material is going to go back to like mid-2000s, early 2000s.
Man, I feel like that's a missed opportunity to do like a parents and kids together, like,
How cool would that be?
father-son team or something like
right?
that.
I think it would be awesome to do like a daytime version for kids, and then maybe like for late night, do like a late night version of it that's like a little more PG-13. You know what I mean?
Sure. Or even like, how Snick was, where it was maybe like, appropriate enough for the younger kids, but as it got later, it was like, all right, now it's for the teenagers, like in the 8 to 8:30 range,
Right.
I hate to break both your bubbles, but we are not anywhere close to the demographic that Nickelodeon is going for.
No,
Well,
not
that
anymore.
is
We're
absolutely
not.
true.
They're not going to do anything for us. Now, the cool thing is that most of us are of age and we could have kids that age. So come on, help us out, Nickelodeon. All right, what else you got for us, Christian?
Well, in other news, another relatively classic, and I can't believe I'm calling this classic. It's 20 years old at this point, just about 20 years old. A classic syndicated game show has been brought back in reruns on the Roku channel. So everybody knows, well, most people were aware of the global phenomenon that was The Weakest Link, hosted by Ann Robinson on NBC, the You Are the Weakest Link, Goodbye, that whole thing. Now, there was a daytime version hosted by the man who's now the announcer on The Price is Right. His name is George Gray, and I thought he did a really good job hosting the show. Well, his first season of the daytime syndicated Weakest Link is available for viewing on the Roku channel for free if you have a Roku device or anything that's capable of streaming their content. And it's a really fun watch. Watching it, you realize a lot of the differences between what the show used to be and what it is now with Jane Lynch, and that there used to be more of a focus on the gameplay rather than just the host being mean to everybody. But Weakest Link, first season of the syndicated version, is available for replay on the Roku channel, and it's been a fun watch for me this weekend.
Neat. I'll have to check that out. I have a Roku sitting in a box somewhere in my closet.
Why does it seem like everybody has at least one Roku like sitting somewhere in their closet? I had no idea so many people had them.
So far as I understood, they were the first like stream, YouTube and stuff to your TV device. It was at least the first easy one that I knew about. And then Chromecast came along and blew it out of the water, so everybody got a Chromecast and didn't want to get rid of their Roku and just shoved it in the closet somewhere.
Oh, I see. I hated my Chromecast. I love my Roku.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I think that maybe I had not too good. I don't think I had really good Wi-Fi when I had a Chromecast, and you have to have good Wi-Fi in order to make use of something like that.
Gotcha. Yeah, we love ours.
Well, for those of you who do love The Weakest Link, it is going to be an upcoming game show that we are going to feature in the next couple of weeks of the show as well. So just a quick little tease for that.
Enticing.
I have a lot of interesting things to say about The Weakest Link, so I'm excited for that.
Oh, excellent. All right, great. Anything else for us, Christian?
Well, the final news story I have is a news story concerning game shows. So in England, there was a casting notice that went out for this new game show. Now, game shows in England premiere, it seems like every week. And as a matter of fact, there's a new version of Lingo that's on in the UK that started about a month ago. And I know I'm sure we'll talk about Lingo later. But so there's a casting that went out for couples or teams of two that want to win thousands and thousands of pounds, and there was a bit of an uproar on social media over the title of the show. Now, it seems to have something to do, I'm going to guess, with like skee ball or billiards, or they're taking one of those games and converting it into a game show format. Now, the title of the show is The Money Shot.
Oh!
And the casting went out, and so BuzzerBlog unofficially declared it the worst game show title ever.
I mean, no kidding. And the casting call for that, I guarantee you half the people, at least, who showed up for that casting call thought they were doing a porn.
Man, this is flagrant false advertising. But the producers of this upcoming show, which we don't know anything about the format yet, they just announced the casting. The producers have heard everyone's various calls on social media, and the show is now called The Moneyball.
I guess that's better, but...
There's lots of cringy moments with every name or every title or even different things that go on in certain episodes. Like when we talk about lingo, and Chuck keeps saying, "Reach in there and grab those balls."
Oh, yeah. Oh, even if you go back to like the old Price is Right, when women used to have to reach into Bob Barker's pocket to pull $100 out.
I remember that.
Oh,
Oh, man.
God.
Yeah.
You know, you watch the reruns now on Pluto TV. They really went for it. They used to get a close-up of the girl's hand going into his pocket.
Man, that's wild.
All right. What about this week in game show history?
Well, this week in game show history, we are going back to the ancient era of 1980. And the premiere of a revival of a show that was a minor hit in the 60s, came back again early 1980s, in 1980. And the show was called Camouflage. I don't know if in either of your research you've come across a show called Camouflage.
You know, I saw the title. I had no idea what it was, and I didn't go down the rabbit hole when I saw that title. I was like, oh, that's one for another day. So
Okay.
please exaggerate.
Elaborate?
Elaborate. Thank you.
Of course. So, Camouflage.
Wait, hang on. Could you also exaggerate, though? Elaborate and exaggerate?
No, do not exaggerate. Just elaborate, please.
Camouflage was the greatest television program ever created by man. No, Camouflage was a really cool show. So it was based on the concept of hidden pictures. So like in the back of Highlights magazine, when you had to like look at the picture and find hidden objects and things like that.
Yeah, hocus
So-
pocus. Tell the
yeah.
difference between these two things, kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. So, so the game would start with a drawing. And it was a really intricate sort of drawing, but hidden in that drawing was a certain object. And the goal of the game was to be the first to find that object. So they played a little like quiz, so you answer a question, and every time you get a question right, a layer of camouflage comes off the picture. And they did it in a really cool way. Like it was on a big overhead projector, and they would just like gradually eliminate layers until you can see the hidden picture, you know. Each player had a big like pointing stick that like a teacher used to have. And when they thought they knew it, they would let the host know, and they would come up to the screen and trace it. And on this version of Camouflage, you get the cheesiest 80s synth music you've ever heard. It's beautiful. And
Nice.
the drama that they pump into this like silly game is just like so cool. But Camouflage, really trippy the way they casted contestants. They just seem to have the most manic contestants on this version of the show. So if you ever see it on YouTube, it almost feels scripted, these people that they get. Almost like rejects from The Gong Show, which, by the way, also produced by Chuck Barris, producer of The Gong Show. So maybe there was something to that. Show hosted by Tom Campbell, local California disc jockey, who a couple years later ended up getting a shot at an audition to be the host of Sale of the Century, which I had the privilege of watching a couple months ago. He did a decent job. Really, really, really cool show, Camouflage. Also, the early version of the show, so this was on in the 60s on ABC in the daytime. Now, there was an artist who created all the drawings for the show by the name of Eric Lieber, and he was a commercial artist, and this was one of his first gigs, and I think his first gig on TV. 2 decades later, he would go on to greater fame as the creator of Love Connection. So there's a connection for you. So yeah, Camouflage, really, really, really cool show. Check it out on YouTube if you get a chance.
That sounds awesome. I want to check it out.
Mike, it's that time, and we're ready to stump the chumper. God, I can't even say it. Okay, how about Stump or Be Chumps? How about we just change name to Stump or
What
Be
about
Chumps?
just Stump or Chump?
There you go. There it is.
All right, Stump
I
or
like it.
Chump. There we go.
What do you have for us this week? Go ahead.
Well, okay, so our listener friend Randy has written in, and he says, quote unquote, he's yelling timber because, Christian, you are going down.
Oh,
He has
Here comes the diarrhea again.
Oh boy, he has submitted a slew of stuff, and so I'm going to hold some of it for later. I'm going to omit some details, maybe come back later, but yeah, I think he's got some good ones here. So let's start with this one from the Bob Barker era of Price is Right. I want you to give me the make, model, and color of the first car given away by Bob Barker on The Price is Right.
That's a really good one. Okay. So, September 4th, 1972 was the first episode of The Price is Right on CBS, hosted by Bob Barker. And if I'm not mistaken, the first pricing game they ever played, any number, which they played to this day, also was Bob Barker's final pricing game before he retired. They gave away a car. So the first prize ever given away as a prize for a pricing game on the show was a car. Now, if we're going back to the early 70s, there were a few makes and models of car that were fairly common on these shows. One of them, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that the first car they gave away on The Price is Right was one that you'd see on a lot of other shows. I'm going to say it was I'm going to say it was a Chevrolet Vega, and if I'm not mistaken, it was yellow.
Oh my God, you're so close. It is a Chevy Vega. You are right about that.
Okay.
It is not yellow though. So if you'd like to maybe think again and give it another swing.
What color would that car have been? I'm struggling to think of it, and I'm also struggling to care. It's so interesting.
That's fair. Well, hey, you know what? I'm calling it. I think it just happened, guys.
Did we finally stump the chump?
Well, we didn't, but Randy sure as heck did.
Oh, well, that's great. We finally got one. What was the actual color, Michael?
It is a baby blue Chevy Vega.
You know, I still got to go and say 2 out of 3. That's a 3-part question, and 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
I'm proud of my guess. It was the early 70s. Everything was yellow.
Well, and that is a valid guess and that's why I wanted to give you a second guess, because I feel like good second guesses would have been either baby blue or that like weird pea olive.
Yeah, green. That was what I was thinking. Yeah, I was thinking green or yellow were my 2 guesses on that. I could not have told you it was a Chevy, Vega?
Vega, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know what the car is. Jesus.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. 2 out of 3. I'm not saying, let's give Randy like a half point. And if one of Randy's next questions, we'll give him another half point or something like that.
For a full stump? All right, I'm down with that.
Yeah, all right.
You know what? You know what? Why don't you give me another question? If he stumps me on this one, we'll give him the full point.
Okay. All right. Absolutely, because I think this is going to stump you. I left this out on purpose. What was the name?
All right, go ahead.
What was the name of the woman who won the car?
Oh,
Christ.
Oh.
How the hell is he supposed to know? Oh, okay.
The name of the woman who won the first car. So the name, okay.
The person who won that baby blue Chevy Vega.
So back in the day, I used to collect VHS tapes of game shows. That was before YouTube. That was one of the ways that people like me would see all this stuff that you wouldn't be able to see on the internet or on Game Show Network. And one of the first tapes I ever got was a master copy of the first episode of The Price is Right. And I was fascinated by it. I watched it all the time. I used to watch this episode repeatedly. All the time. Do you see where I'm going with this, Randy?
Yeah.
So?
I believe her name was Connie Dunnell was the first contestant.
We don't even have a last name, but Connie was correct. Randy, a valiant effort, but I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to take it back. Knowing Connie and her last name is far better than not knowing it was Baby Blue.
Yeah,
so,
there's no stump here, that's for sure.
Sorry.
It was. You know what? I have to give credit where credit was due, though. That was a good question.
I really like that one.
Altogether, was a good question. I
thought it was a little ridiculous. I got to be honest. I was like, "There's no way in hell anybody should properly know this."
Well, that's how I feel about the color of the damn thing. But Hey.
All right.
That's fair. You remember the woman's name, so yeah.
I'm giving it to him. It's good to go.
I will say though, Randy rocked the boat. Like it happened. We got a little chisel in a crevice, right? So it can be done.
There's a little chink in the armor there, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel so exposed.
It's only just begun there, Chumpy.
We keep chipping away. We'll get there eventually.
All right. This week we are featuring the show Lingo, one of your personal favorites.
I love Lingo, and I've loved Lingo ever since I was young. I mean, the current version, or the most current version with Chuck Woolery, started back in the early 2000s, and I just fell in love with it. As I got older and I started researching game shows more and more, I realized that wasn't the first version of the show. So it started in the late 80s, hosted by Michael Reagan, the son of Ronald Reagan. He did it for the first season, then went on a book tour. He wrote a big tell-all book, and he became a really famous author. So the producer of the show, Ralph Andrews, who you'll see on the credits of a lot of shows in the 70s and 80s, saved some money, I guess, and hosted it himself. And he did a fantastic job. But the Chuck Woolery one, I think, is the most fondly remembered. A show that had success in America, but also really had success around the world. In the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken, It was either on for a really, really long time, or it's still currently on. But it is just an incredibly popular show. So popular that a game, so popular that an adaptation of the game was released for Game Boy and is now one of the rarest Game Boy cartridges. And yeah, Lingo for Game Boy is a lot of fun. If you remember the rule that they have in Europe, where the word will never be a plural ending in S, it's a lot more fun. But yeah, Lingo is just an incredible, really fun show. Like Mike mentioned earlier, it's fun to watch it, but it's also just as fun to listen to it, to have it on in the background. It's you know, you can hear the sound effects and hear the guesses being spelled out, and you can follow along with the game just as easily as you would be if you were sitting in front of the TV. I love Lingo.
I wouldn't say just as easily, but the point stands that yes, you can still play the game without watching.
Right.
I want to say that the first year of the Woolery show was filmed on the Netherlands set.
Yeah,
Yes,
it was.
Yeah,
Yep, sure was.
I remember reading that somewhere. It is now time for a plug for Buzzer Blog.
Of course, BuzzerBlog.com, the #1 game show website in the world, whether you're looking for information on new shows, current shows, Nickelodeon shows like The Money Shot. BuzzerBlog.com is the place to go, whether you're an industry insider, a diehard game show fan, or just a casual lover of all things wheel, card, board, question, answer. BuzzerBlog.com. Thank you very much.
All right, we're so close, Mike. I feel like we're on the verge of stumping Christian.
I mean, the hole has been breached. It's only a matter of time until
He sinks.
the chamber floods. Yes.
Right. Okay, if you'd like to send in a Stump the Chump question, please do so via social or email from the website. Hit us at tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com. All right, Mike, coming up next, we have the gameplay of Lingo. And this is now, I'm not surprised this is one of your favorite shows because of the fact that it's a really good game. It's a fun game.
Well, it's a fun game. It's got Chuck Woolery as the host, and I've said before he's my all-time favorite game show host.
Sure.
And I'm a bit of a lexicographer. It's interesting. I can't remember right now the word for a
I know for a guy who
lover
likes
of
wordplay.
words. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I regularly just read the dictionary for fun and stuff. So like I really, really like word games, and I think this is a really good one. I like that it's so versatile with only 5-letter words.
Right.
Yeah, and then again the gameplay of it, the way it's presented as bingo is awesome. That gives you a sense of chance and luck. You know, it's not all skill. It's got the perfect balance of everything, and I just absolutely love it.
Well, we'll talk more about that when we rate the game at the very end of the third segment. But coming up next, it is the gameplay. In the show is Lingo. It's right here at America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won.
Right here.
And there it is, the theme song from Lingo, our featured show this week on America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. I am Tom Bastek, alongside me, Mike Jacobs, as always. Michael.
Hello, sir. That is indeed the Game Show Network version of the show, which is primarily what we're going to be talking about here. But as far as gameplay goes, you got a combination basically of bingo, of course, as the title suggests. And I don't know if you're familiar with the board game Mastermind.
Yes, that's the one with the you got like 3 little or 4 little beads, and you work them up towards. You got to build the pattern. And
yeah, you got to figure out what
towards
pattern the quote unquote mastermind has set. Yeah, and so
Right.
It's basically a combination of those two games. But we feature 2 teams of 2 contestants each. And the game starts with each team being presented with their Lingo board. It's basically just a bingo sheet, right? And then 7 spots on each board are covered. I don't think it's 100% at random. From what I could see, it looked like maybe 2 in each row, but that doesn't make 7. So I don't know exactly what the patterning is.
No, it looked pretty random to me. I don't know. There may not be, but it looked
Well,
pretty
and
random.
I the only reason why I can't say it was completely random is because, as we talked about in past episodes, total randomness includes clumping, which means that every now and then people would get a board that would allow them to get a bingo on the first ball, and that does not happen until the bonus round. So I think there is some amount of plannedness to it in that it excludes the patterns that could present that situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I mean that you could still have random within a certain set of circumstances.
Yes.
In other words,
yes.
Please give me random numbers between 1 and 10, but do not include even numbers.
Yes, exactly.
Still random, but you're giving a rule to the randomness.
Yes, true. Absolutely. So that's what's happening here. Ultimately, the goal, like we said, is to get a lingo, a bingo, a 5 covered spots in a row. And so in order to cover these spots on the board, you have to solve a 5-letter word puzzle. So they will be given this puzzle where the first letter of the word is shown, and then the contestant has to guess what it is. And so this is where the sort of mastermind aspect of it, where the contestant will guess a word and the word is sort of analyzed, where a red square will highlight a letter that is correct, and a yellow circle will show a letter that is in the word, but not in the place where you've guessed it, in another place. So for example, let's say the word is lingo, the name of the show itself. Let's say, start off with just the L. So I say lions, Lions. So that would show me a red square for the L and the I, and then a yellow circle for the O and the N, meaning that there are both an O and an N in the word, but not where I put them.
Right.
So I, kind of shuffle this up and try and figure out what word lingo actually is. Now, like I mentioned earlier, it's fascinating how many 5-letter words that there are. Like the fact that you can make a 6-season TV show out of nothing but 5-letter words. Like I'm sure they repeated some, but still, that's very impressive. But what it made me think of was, I wonder if the international versions, I should have looked into this, but if the international versions had to use different lengths. Like, do you think that maybe in French, for example, 6-letter words are more common than 5 or something like that?
It's a possibility. I don't know the answer to the question that you're asking,
I don't
but
either.
I definitely could say, like, in Sweden, is it like 14-letter words?
Right? And there's no vowels. No, I should ask Christian about that. Bummer. We'll go back and we'll put that in a correction for the next episode.
Sure,
I'll
that's
figure
great.
it out.
Excellent.
Yes, indeed. So anyways, where were we? The contestant has 5 chances to go through these words and these letters and figure out what the word is. If they don't, then it goes to the other team. It can also go to the other team if they run out of time, or if they guess something that's not a word, or maybe misspell the word, which happens more frequently than I'm sure the contestants would like to admit.
Yeah, you only got 5 seconds, and then you got to spell whatever you say, and half the time you know to say it, and then you're trying to think about spelling it. I mean, I could definitely see how that.
Yeah,
comes up a lot.
the pressure of being on the show, I'm sure, is big, and it's funny because often you will see people who make guesses that are like very obviously wrong, like the second letter, and then you guess a word where the second letter doesn't match. And when we were sitting there and talking about it, my wife was like, why do they keep doing that? And the idea is not that they're making a guess to find out what the word is. It's that you have to keep moving and you are guessing other letters, right? So that second letter, you're not going to get a red square, but you might get a yellow circle, and now another letter that's in the word somewhere. So you're gaining information.
And that's the piece of strategy that I really wonder about. Like if I'm playing this game and let's say the word's lingo, and I say light the first time, and so LIG is in there, but N and O aren't, obviously, right? Do I just go for a totally different set of letters, the second time just to figure it out? Or if I do the first one and I say, something that has nothing from lingo in there, do I just go for a totally different word? Or if it only has one letter, a totally different word, just to continue to give my chances bigger? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
right. Well,
to cast a wider net.
Yes, and I think the sort of impetus for making that decision all comes down to the timing. It seems to me that your best bet is to try and guess what the word is, right? Because you only have 5 guesses. You don't want to waste them. But
Sure.
I think if you're running out of time, it is far better to guess a wrong word and gain some information from the letters there than it is to run out of time. So
Cool.
I think that's sort of when you make that. It's like make or break, because they will say hurry up before they call time on you. So at that point, just throw out walrus, or whatever. That's not 5 letters, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, just throw that walrus right on out there.
Throw
Go
out
ahead.
walrus, and it's the same as running out of time. So, at least you'll get a laugh out of the host.
There you go. There you go.
So if they don't get the correct word, it will pass to the opponent, like I said. And if there's more than 1 letter remaining, they get a bonus letter, and then they have a chance to guess the word. They only get a single chance. Either way, whoever gets it right, they bank some money for the correct guess, and then they get to pull 2 balls from their hopper. And those balls have corresponding numbers on them, and they have numbers on them, and they correspond to numbers on the board. So whatever you pull out of the hopper gets covered up, of course, leading towards the eventual lingo. There are also question marks in the hopper, which allow the team to choose whatever space they want to cover. Hopefully, when you get those, it's a choice that will win you the game. Otherwise, you got to try and find what opens up the most potential wins. And then there's also red balls that will end your turn immediately. Chuck refers to them as stoppers, but if I read this correctly, I don't think that's actually what they're called on the show. I think he just referred to it as that as a nod to Scrabble, where they actually were called stoppers.
Huh. Interesting.
A similar word game, also hosted by Chuck Woolery, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see here. The game continues like that, playing word games, covering up spaces until someone gets a lingo, at which point they get even more money added to their total bank. And that entire process of playing the game of lingo just continues until time is called. And then you move to round 2, where the point values are doubled. And then whoever has the most at the end of the second round will move on to the final bonus round. Occasionally, it's possible there is a tie after the rounds. In that case, you get a 7-letter word, and the first and last letter are revealed. And then letters are slowly revealed at random until someone buzzes in with a correct guess. And then whoever does that.
Kind of like a toss-up in Wheel of Fortune.
Yes, very much so. So the bonus lingo is basically that 5-letter puzzle word game again, but you're trying to get as many you're trying to get as many solved correctly as possible within the allotted time. So it's a game of speed. You want to get as many as you can. Each correct word gets you $100. And then it earns you as well a pull from the hopper on the final board. So what is the final board, you say? Well, the final board is, again, a final lingo board, just the same as all the others. But this time they cover up 13 numbers, making sure that there is a number on the board that could win it, like you could, in theory, get it on the first pull, right? So if you get it on your first pull, you win all your prizes with a bonus jackpot. Otherwise, you get however many pulls, again, for each correct word that you got in that speed round. And you just try and get a lingo. If you do, you win all the money that they've banked in the rounds leading up to that, plus a prize package with a bunch of good stuff. Otherwise, I guess you get nothing. I'm sure there's some sort of consolation prize, but yeah. And so most of this gameplay applies to all versions of the show. We're talking specifically of the Game Show Network GSN version. Others played similarly, minor differences here and there, but the one biggest difference that I thought was super cool was in the original version there was a round called the No Lingo round, and the idea is you are given a board where I don't remember how many numbers, but a lot of numbers are covered up, and there's like a couple of instant lingos, and it's a lot of numbers filled up, and you go through, you guess your lingo word, your 5-letter word as normal. But for each guess you took, you had to, I guess, were penalized with another pull from the hopper.
Oh, no.
And you wanted to not get a lingo. So again, no lingo is the name of the round. So the idea is if you get it on the first go, you only have to pull 1 ball and you're probably safe. If you didn't get the word at all, it's a 2-ball penalty, which means 7 balls total are being drawn.
Oh, gosh.
And at that point, like, I have to imagine you have to get it. Like, I would almost imagine it's statistically impossible to pull 7 balls and not get a lingo at that point.
Right.
But I just thought that was a really cool concept. As the contestant, it was another one of those you can stop at any point and take the money that you've won. But yeah, if you could play and survive for 5 rounds, there was just a huge jackpot. I think it started out as like $16,000 or something, and then increased over time. But it just I love that idea of don't get a lingo, swap it out.
It's interesting because you and I talk a lot about, what could have we done to this game to make it better or worse or whatever. And depending on what game it is that we're talking about, the idea of doing something that's the antithesis of what the game is about is fun.
I totally agree.
Naturally fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
We may have to incorporate that into some of our trivia games.
That's true.
I didn't even think of that, but that's a possibility. Yeah, we'll have to work on that. All right, great. What else?
Well, that's it. I mean, like I say, there's all sorts of, different tweaks here and there over the years, but not really anything worth mentioning. But Lingo, a fairly simple concept with a just surprising complexity to it.
It's not as easy as I thought it would be. I downloaded a Lingo app when we started doing the research, because I was like, oh, there's got to be an app out there, and there is. I downloaded a little Lingo app, and I started playing the game, and I was terrible.
Really?
I mean, awful.
Interesting.
And I was like, oh, God, how am I this bad? I mean, it's 5-letter words. Like, it should not be this difficult. But they only give you 5 chances. And I'm like, that's just not enough for me. And then as I started to play it a little more, I started to get my own strategies about it, and I started to figure them out a little bit quicker. And that's it. It's definitely something that if I was to go on the show, if the show was still out and I was to go on it, I would definitely be beefing up and doing a lot of research ahead of time.
I think I want to play one of those apps because I think I would be really good at it. I'm really good at playing along with it, at least.
Sure.
And like I said, I enjoy word games and things like that. So I'd be interested to see how I'd do it live. As far as like the 5-letter words, it should be easy. To me, what trips me up is 2 different situations. One is when there's a double letter. Like if you have HA and it's like happy, I won't think of putting a P in there twice. And then the other one is when you get a vowel, but it's one of those situations where the letter that precedes it changes the way the vowel sounds. And so you're pronouncing it in your head the wrong way, and you're like just completely blind to another word that is right there staring you in the face.
Yeah, and again, that's the mental block. And then put yourself under the lights and with the music and the competition, and all of a sudden it's not an easy game.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk history of Lingo. It's right around the corner. We are back in just a bit. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. And welcome back. Episode number 34, segment number 3, the featured game show this week on America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won, is Lingo. Mike, it's time for history.
It is time for history. So like I said earlier, everything we've been talking about is the Game Show Network version. That was my favorite version. I did not even know there was an earlier one until I started doing research for this, but as Christian mentioned in the news, indeed, there is an earlier version. September 28th, 1987 is when the world was first introduced to Lingo, hosted by Michael Reagan, who was indeed Ronald Reagan's son, though I will add the addendum, apparently his adopted son. Not that really matters, but, I wanted to have a fact that Christian didn't mention.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
So he only lasted about 6 months. Until producer Ralph Andrews stepped in. I had a theory that maybe it was he wasn't very good, so the producer was like, all right, I'm just going to take over. But like Christian mentioned, apparently it was that Reagan's book was taking off, so he went on a tour and then just left the show. So there you have it. Less scandalous than I would have surmised, but what are you going to do?
You were hoping for drama. Instead, you got a mere comedy.
I mean, I host a podcast on game show stuff. We should have some sort of spice in there, right?
I guess. Well, and there was a little bit in the news, so there we go.
There you go. After Ralph Andrews stepped in, it really only lasted about another month, finally ending on March 25th, 1988. Complete with the reruns that ran after it, it did not even stay on the air for a full year. So,
wow.
Not good for that one.
Okay.
And like I said, that was 87 to 88. Long time passes until August 5th, 2002, and that is when Game Show Network revives the program and puts the classic Chuck Woolery as the host. And for the first season, it was just Chuck, but they did later introduce the idea of the co-host sort of running the computer, setting up the lingo boards and the words. You phrased this a little more strongly than I have it written here. I have my doubts as to the legitimacy of the role that the co-host is actually playing on this show.
The co-host, I'll say it on the air. I have zero problem with saying, and we talked about it off air, but I will definitely say it. The co-host is totally worthless in this game and is not necessary.
It is. She's very superfluous.
I mean, by the way, I like her. The Chandra lady. What was her name?
So first was Stacey Haynes, who is known for being in soap operas and infomercials.
Right.
And actually, her stand-up comedy is what led to the role. She used to do stand-up comedy at the Comedy Store, which, for those not familiar, is a very, very famous comedy club in Hollywood, owned famously by Pauly Shore's parents, and so I guess ultimately could be blamed for his rise in popularity.
Okay.
But yeah, so the one that you're talking about was later former Miss USA Shondi Finnessy.
Yeah, she's very likable. I mean, she's got a good personality, and she's very sweet to the contestants, and to Chuck and her got an interesting relationship, and it's not bad. I mean, she's not bad. It's just that she's not really doing anything.
I totally agree. She is a good on-air personality, but they have her sitting in front of this computer, and it's like she's firing off the boards and checking the words and all that, but there's no way any of that is actually doing anything. They wouldn't leave it up to her to check spelling, and the lingo boards are randomly generated. Like, she's literally just pretending to press buttons.
It's just, and you know, it bothers me because there's a lot of game shows for a lot of years, and I would say even some that are on today, where co-hosts are just not necessary. They're just superfluous.
Well, and it's very clearly they want a pretty lady on their show, which, sure. I mean, at the end of the day, I guess it sells, but it just, I don't know. I don't like that as a concept.
Exactly right. Agreed.
Plus, I mean, Chuck Woolery is a handsome man. Surely there's some eye candy there, right?
I mean, my thing is this, is that Chuck is such a good personality, too, and he's well known from years and years and years of game shows. It's like, you felt the need to balance that act out?
Right, I totally agree. Now, again, the rapport that he has with Shondi, or Shandy, however it's pronounced, I think is great. It's almost this sort of like Sam and Diane kind of like flirty, but they also don't really like each other kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, so I mean, it plays well. So I don't hate the concept of having him have a co-host. It's just not necessary at all. He can definitely stand on his own.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing is that the co-host, the other thing I don't like about this is this episode, I mean, this version of it, is the people actually holding up their balls and like looking at the camera and going 32. Mm-hmm. Like, it seems so forced and fake. Now, Christian and I talked a little bit about this, and maybe it's because they need to do that so that there's proof that they actually pulled the number 32. In the original version that was back in the day, that was done. You know, the one with Michael Reagan. That the hostess would come out and actually read the numbers that were pulled.
Gotcha.
So to me, that legitimized her role a little bit more than sitting at a fake
that makes
computer.
it more of a Vanna White kind of thing.
Correct. Correct. And at that point, you could say to me, if someone says, "Oh, well, that's not really necessary to have her there," I would say, you know, because the contestants can read off the numbers. I'd say yes, but at least then she's reading off the number to legitimize the fact that they're not cheating, and that's more of a purpose than sitting at a computer doing nothing.
Right. Well, and I mean, to that point, there is no need to have Vanna White on that show anymore. They're just monitors that turn off.
This is true. But I think that that's also more of an homage to where it was and what it was back in the day.
So we will say, if we're to boil this down to a single word for each, we would say Shandi Fennessy is superfluous. Vanna White is vestigial.
Vestigial is such a great word. You know, you being a big word person, I love that you use vestigial. That's great. Okay, yes, I would agree and wholeheartedly. Please continue.
So another notable name on this Game Show Network version, not for the entire time, but for a amount of time, there was an announcer by the name of Randy Thomas, who was a woman previously known, I knew her best as her voiceover on the famous Hooked on Phonics Worked For Me commercials. I don't know if you remember the phone number, 1-800-ABCDEFG. Yep. That was her.
Oh, that's it, dude. The fact that I remembered that just that cracked me up. Holy
and we also touched upon the first 20 episodes were done in the Netherlands, but then of course production moved back to America, and that's where it stayed for the rest of the time.
You have written in the cue sheet here, weird, no idea why.
Right.
And I'm going to wager a guess here. And maybe someone out there knows, and if they do, please let us know. We'd be very happy to put that out there. I'm going to guess they weren't sure they were going to make more than a season. It was probably cheaper to use that set than it was to build another set in case it didn't go more than one season.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right.
I mean, that would be my guess. I don't know if that's the truth, but that's my guess there.
That's the best hypothesis I have.
Excellent. Okay, great.
And so, I mean, this was definitely one of Game Show Network's most popular shows. I really wanted to confirm that it was the most popular, but I don't really know, what metric you would use to say most popular, I guess, other than ratings. But in any case, I couldn't necessarily confirm that it was its highest rated show or the show that made the most money or anything. But, I mean, sure. It has to be. It ran for a very long time. And Game Show Network has had several original programs and met with mixed success over the years, but I don't know any of them that ran for 6 seasons. I feel like that's as good as any traditional network show. Finally ended its run in 2007, and that was the end of Chuck Woolery's run. 2011, they gave it another go, this time with Bill Engvall as the host. I'm not a big fan of him, but, whatever. People like him.
Sure.
But just like with the run on the 80s, it was gone in less than a year. So it's almost like if you look at the show, it's almost like a rubens sandwich, right? You got 2 little thin slices of bread on either side and then a huge chunk of meat in the middle.
Well, that's a great way to put it. I would definitely say that if any of them are the sauerkraut, it would probably be Bill Engvall as the sauerkraut in that sandwich.
What, in that I asked them to put half as much as they normally would on?
Exactly.
Well, I do like sauerkraut on a Reuben, but some places really pile it on there.
Well, because it's cheap.
You gotta have more meat. You gotta have more meat than sauerkraut.
Dude, and I'm a huge sauerkraut fan. I even make my own sauerkraut if I've got extra cabbage laying around. I'll just make the rest of it into sauerkraut, and so I love sauerkraut. So if you give me a Reuben and it's got a lot of sauerkraut on it, I will sometimes pull the Reuben apart and eat it open faced just to enjoy the extra sauerkraut. But I will tell you that I agree with you. If there's not more corned beef than there is sauerkraut, you're getting a cheap Reuben here.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and I'm not even a huge sauerkraut fan. I don't think of any situation outside of a Reuben that I like it. But Anyways, we digress. Despite the sauerkrautedness of Bill Engvall's version, it does hold the distinction of having the highest payout of all the editions of Lingo, which is $100,000 won by two different people.
Wow, cool.
So I wonder if maybe they were just giving away too much money on that show, and that's why it didn't last more than a year.
There you go.
And then as far as any new additions, no word, but Game Show Network is holding on to the rights. They're not letting it go. They don't show reruns currently anymore. But, if they still hold the rights, it seems like it's always possible to come back.
I think this one is one that isn't like a product of a generation. This could come back in multiple incarnations. I definitely see it coming back again, and I'm sure that's why Game Show Network is holding on to it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. I think a lot of it is going to be finding the right host, because Chuck Woolery is just he's so personable with all the contestants. And really what I found is, like, I sort of pinpointed a thing I like about him, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I think it's more that I take after him. Like, I've been subconsciously influenced by him, but he does a thing that I like to do when hosting that makes it lighter, which is, obviously you can't really break the fourth wall in the game show, but like, talk about the fact that it is a game show, right? Like, he'll often say like, that sound like, I think one of the guesses was belch, and the word ended up being bench, but when they guessed belch, he was like, oh, I bet that's it. That sounds like our crew. He's like talking about how the fact that these are written by people on the show, like sort of lifting the curtain up a little bit. And
yeah, just letting you peek behind a little bit to show
and
what's
I
going
think
on.
that does a lot to humanize him. I think it does a lot to lighten the show and make it feel not as pressured for the contestants. And I think just that's what he does best. I
also think that
mood.
Well, and I also think that in general is a product of the 80s and 90s game shows as well. And what I mean by that is if you go back and now we've watched enough of old programming that you see that happen a lot in a lot of the older shows, where they'll say, oh, the writing staff, blah, 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 or watch out for those judges, they're terrible, right. That kind of thing. And that you saw a lot more. In today's new game shows that are out, or the new versions of them, like the ABC versions, you don't see a lot of peeking behind the curtain there.
I agree. They're also, not that they're serious. Like, obviously the new match game isn't serious, but it has this air of professionalism where it's like the production has to be flawless, and you can't highlight any,
Well, there is a direct, something that flies in the face of that comment, and that is the show Don't, which I know you don't like. You and I have talked about this. I've watched every episode of the first season, and they go behind the scenes in every cutaway to the commercial.
Yeah. They show the guy moving the
they show the stagehands moving the pieces.
Right.
They'll show the guy come over with the clipboard and be like, "Hey, you need to stop doing this and start doing this." And a lot of it's bits, and I get that, but they really are incorporating the crew there into the show, which is definitely a peek behind that curtain.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Good point.
All right, well, that is the history. So now it's time for us to rate.
Man, I want you to go first on this one, because.
All right. Well, first of all, we need to decide what are we rating.
It's 5, right? So it's letters.
Oh,
There's
yeah,
5
letters. That's right. 5 letters. I like it. Okay. So my 5. Oh, and you know what? I'm going to give it a 5-letter word. How about that?
Ooh, yeah. Let's spell out lingo. I guess that makes it difficult to do fractions, huh?
Yeah. Well, I was going to give the word 3. As my 5-letter word for my rating, but I'll give it 5. I'm going to give it 3 letters. I actually wanted to go a little bit higher. I love Chuck Woolery. I think he's great, and the gameplay is fantastic. But I just think there's some things that are just a little ridiculous, and hopefully they'll clean those up and make it a little bit better for the next version that comes out. But because of the cheesiness of the hostess, that isn't really necessary, and just some of the other little things that went on. Like, I don't like the whole holding up the ball and smiling and picture, like you're drawing lottery balls. So there was just certain things I didn't really care for, but that's not going to deter from the fact that it's still a great game show. I think it did great, and Chuck Woolery back in the 2000s was always nice to have as well. So 3 for me, 3 letters, and for you, Mike, your turn.
I am going significantly higher than you. Like I say, I love this show. I love Chuck Woolery. I love word games. The whole thing, it all clicks for me. The only thing I really felt against it was that it just feels cheap. Like, I think they could have done a better way of getting the numbers instead of just like literally racket balls in a bowl in front of you, you know. Maybe just like, you know, there's a wheel spinning and you press a trigger to stop it or something like that, just to sort of jazz it up. But outside of that, I just absolutely love this show. I don't love it as much as Double Dare, so I'm not going to give it the full 5, but I will give this one a 4.5 out of 5 letters. Yeah, okay. So if we were spelling, I would give it Ling, and then I guess a C, the first half of the O.
Of the O. That's I like it. That's good. That's not bad. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Buzzerblog. Thank you, Randy, for finally cracking the impenetrable wall of Christian's knowledge. We'll get there eventually. And thanks to everyone else who has questions lined up for us. Man, I can't wait. I can't wait to see him fail.
We're gonna get him eventually.
I've never been so excited to see someone fail before. But
tune in again next time. We'll bring you the latest, the greatest in the world of game shows, as well as a brand new featured show too.
And remember, you can always catch us online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com.
Please subscribe, share, like, and drop a review if you like what you heard.
And if you didn't like it, I've got a 5-letter word for you: LEAVE.
See you next week, Mike.
Bye, Tom.
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won, a JTech audio production, copyright 2020. No part of this podcast may be reproduced by anyone without the express written consent of the creators. For more information or to contact us, please go to tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com. All right, Mike, what did you learn this week?
This week, Tom, I learned that there are exactly 12,478 5-letter words in the English language.
Jeez, did you look that up?
I did.
That's amazing.
No, I made a list and I counted them all.
Oh, well, I wouldn't have been surprised. If you had told me that, I would have said, yeah, that's something you've done.
Well, I mean, that does sound like something I would do. But no, I just looked it up.
All right.
What about you? What'd you learn?
So I've definitely learned that for the majority of things, co-hosts are rarely needed in a game show. I mean, I understand why they put them in, but they're just not needed.
Yeah, I think I agree. In some cases, they serve a role, but even that role could be automated in some way.
Yeah. But in addition to that, I really feel like I also learned that I still love the heck out of Chuck Woolery and Rubens.
Oh, I agree on both counts. My favorite game show host and my favorite sandwich. I'll let you figure out which is which.
Copyright 2020, a JTech audio production.